Hi Long Range Hunt, welcome to episode 38 of our terminal ballistic testing, hunting versus match bullets. Now welcome back everybody. I know there's been a big gap in my videos, but I am back again, and today we have the most requested projectile I've ever had for testing, and that is Federal's Terminal Ascent. Now this is a different type of bullet. It's very interesting how it was designed. So you have a nickel plated jacket. Inside is a bonded lead and copper. Now, on the back end is basically all copper. That does not really expand. It kind of stops. So you always have that remaining shank for weight. Now, the front end, you do have a nice large cavity. You have a tip that can be forced into there. It's going to aid with expansion. And the upper portion of the bullet where it meets there is very thin. The jacket is very thin to aid in it opening up easily, which can help with lower impact velocities. Now for this test today, using a 308, this is a 175 grain projectile. Now, I went with this just because I wasn't going to reload it. For this testing, I just picked up a box of ammo, ran it through the 308, actually this one right here, and shot into ballistics gel. Now, let's actually go dive into the actual footage of that, and then we'll discuss everything that goes into that. Now, thanks to the new camera, I got a GoPro 13 Black, and it has a much better slow motion than the previous models at 400 frames per second. So it allows me to capture more, which that was phenomenal footage of that bullet going through there. We had a nice energy transfer. The bullet maintained straight line penetration. So it performed very well. The impact velocity was 2,670 feet per second out of the 308. Again, that's a 175 grain projectile. And you can see that it's basically point blank. You can see the muzzle of the gun. The reason I do that is with any test, I want to test the highest velocity possible out of that. Now, since I'm not reloading and I'm only using factory ammo, that's going to capture what this is going to do basically at point blank, or at distance if you're running these reloaded out of like a 300 or a 30-06. Let's dive into the actual wound cavity itself and take a look at it. And we had the capture block. It did go into the capture block. Now, the max total with both blocks was 23.3 inches of penetration total at 2,670 feet per second. The max width of the permanent wound cavity was 2 inches with an average width of 1.6 inches. Now, it took 1.4 inches to open up once it entered the block. The cavity itself, the main cavity, was 11.6 inches long. At 13 inches in, it stopped doing any real wounding where you just see that small penciling. And it went a total of 7.3 inches into the catch block. So you can see for the velocity, it did pretty well. Now, again, I test as high velocity as I can. So with this 308, I had it almost point blank. That's just to see the potential, because as velocity drops, so will the performance. So your best velocity or your best expansion is going to be at those higher velocities. So if you're running this ammunition, what I just showed you is going to be your max potential. And from there, the wounding will go down. Now, how much is going to depend. And something else I want to cover on this, we had a nice transfer energy. It performed very well at the impact velocity it did, gave a nice wound cavity for that projectile and everything. But their minimum impact velocity I have a problem with. And here's why. Now, what is a minimum impact velocity? That is the minimum velocity required for that bullet to expand. And that's something how we find our maximum effective range. So you're going to have your own range and then the projectile's range. So let's say this maxes out at 600 yards. Well, that's your limit. Even if you're good to 1,500 yards, your limit with that projectile, because of performance, is only 600 yards, because of the minimum impact velocity. And vice versa, if let's say it's good to 600 yards, but you're only good yourself to 400, that means you're limited to 400. Doesn't matter if the bullet's capable past that. You have to match your capabilities with the bullet's capabilities. So the problem I have with this is, here is a picture of the bullets, and this, was testing done at different impact velocities, and you can see they claim a very low minimum impact velocity. The problem with that is that technically expansion? Absolutely it is. However, is that enough expansion to actually stabilize that bullet inside the body? No, I would never trust that. That's barely better than a full metal jacket. So it's kind of deceiving in the marketing there. Now, is that expansion? Yes, so they're not technically lying, but there is no way I would ever recommend anybody shooting one at that impact velocity. Actual bullets that can expand like that, here's a couple. You can see the construction. They're very thin jacketed. They're non-bonded, soft core tipped. You're not going to be able to get the same type of expansion that you do with these with something that is thick and bonded. Now, yes, the front end might be thin, but it's still a bonded bullet. It's still going to have more trouble opening up. And so realistically, 17 to 1800 feet per second is what I would actually recommend. And to explain this more, you have to have displacement. And you have to have enough expansion to do that, because you need it to stabilize. It's called shoulder stabilization inside the body. So when it impacts, it expands and it creates that displacement. And how that displacement works, flowing around that bullet, will keep it straight and maintaining its forward trajectory. So you need a certain amount of expansion for that. So again, are they lying? No. Are they really giving you good information? No. That's just my 2 cents on that. You guys can do whatever you want, but if you see this section of the wound cavity, that little bit of penciling right there, at that impact velocity, that's what you're going to get with that little bit of the front of the bullet barely, opening up. You're not going to get any real wounding. And you also have, because it won't be able to maintain that forward stability, you're also going to have issues with it. It can change directions, it can tumble, and or both. So it's not something that's ideal. So I'm not trying to put the round down or Federal. I use a lot of Federal stuff. I've got ammo stacked up there from Federal, primers, all that. So it's not a ding at Federal. I know a lot of marketing is trying to capture the long range stuff, but I do highly disagree with their claims on minimum impact velocity. Now, does that take away the fact that this is actually a good bullet? No. It is a good projectile. it's just going to be limited to not that far. Now with this, it's saying on the back of the box, if you match what they're doing, which I was actually faster, you're going to be about 500 to 600 yards when you hit that minimum impact velocity, somewhere in there. Of course, I do have a longer barrel probably than what they tested, but you're looking with this box, 500-600 yards, you're going to be good as long as you're above that minimum impact velocity, and it's going to perform well. And the higher you go, that's the nice part about the bonded part is, yeah, this is slower impact velocity of 2670. If you run that out of a Magnum, like a 300 PRC or something, and really get those velocities up there, bullets have a minimum impact velocity and a maximum impact velocity. And this, because of the construction, can handle those higher impact velocities. It's the low end. You know, that's the problem. There's no such thing as an all-do bullet. Every bullet has its limitations based on construction. The bullets we use to get down to the levels like ELD match, stuff like that, they have a lower maximum impact velocity than something like this. But it allows them to open up at those longer ranges, at those lower impact velocities, and actually give us good damage. So it's a very interesting projectile. You know, it's kind of strange how it's designed to me with, you know, that core in there. It's bonded. You have the nickel plating over that. But obviously it does work. And I've seen quite a few of these. I've got a lot of reports, and guys are having really great results. I mean, this is a great mushroom. For the type of bullet it is, it does very well. So would I recommend this to people? Absolutely. It's a good, solid bullet. What I don't recommend is going to those super low impact velocities. With this setup, this is a good medium range, you know, or technically long range. The majority of long range shots, honestly, are inside 600 yards anyways. So would this give you good performance in the average shot of a long range hunter? Absolutely. So, you know, great bullet. I really, you know, it does have its limitations and the disagreement on the marketing, but all in all, it's a good bullet. I'm going to keep them. I'll do some more testing too, but I'm also going to, you know, shoot some animals with it. I've seen a lot of field results on it. I've seen some other gel, and it's very consistent in how it performs, especially at those higher to, you know, inside that velocity bracket that I gave you. It works really well. So I hope you found this educational. If you have any questions, drop in the comments below. We got plenty more stuff coming up, from equipment reviews to a new bag that's coming out, a new rear bag. I've had that now for a couple weeks or so, 2-3 weeks. It's a prototype, and it should be getting released soon. So lots of good stuff coming up. Everybody be safe out there. Happy hunting.
Hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and turn on notification bell so you won't miss out on any future video. And happy hunting!